Ah, carrots. You know them, you love them, that crunchy, sweet veggie we've been told to eat since we were kids for everything from good eyesight to healthy skin. But what if I told you that a new buzzy health headline is making people wonder if this beloved superfood has a surprising downside? Let's get into it. So here's the big question, the one that's got everyone talking. A new study is suggesting a link between high levels of carotenes, the stuff that makes carrots bright orange and super healthy, and an increased risk of erectile dysfunction. I know, it sounds totally wild. So let's unpack the science and see what's really going on behind the headlines.
Okay, so first things first. Where is this wild claim even coming from, and what does it really say?
Now let's just get one thing straight. For decades, the science on carrots has been awesome. I mean, they're packed with all the good stuff. Antioxidants, vitamins, fiber. They're a total cornerstone of a healthy diet. And nothing we're about to talk about changes that fundamental fact. But, science never sleeps. It's always about asking those what-if questions.
And that's exactly what a research team at Peking University Hospital did. They published a study that dove into the relationship between those carotenes, which you also find in foods like sweet potatoes and mangoes, and male sexual health. And yeah, it led to some pretty eye-opening headlines.
Okay, so this is the number that really made waves. The study found that men who were genetically predisposed to having higher levels of carotene in their bodies had a nearly 60% increased risk of erectile dysfunction. Yeah, that's a number that makes you sit up and pay attention for sure. It's the reason this story blew up. But, and this is probably the most important but in this whole explainer, the researchers themselves were super careful with their language. They said they found a link, a correlation. They did not prove that munching on carrots causes ED. And believe me, that distinction is absolutely everything.
All right, so you're probably wondering, how on earth did they figure this out without just, asking guys how many carrots they ate? Well, it turns out they have a pretty clever method, so let's go behind the headlines to check it out.
I know, it sounds like a weird jump, doesn't it? Connecting your DNA to your diet. But scientists have this amazing tool that basically lets them use our genetics as a sort of natural, randomized experiment. It helps them untangle these really complicated relationships in our health.
It's called Mendelian randomization, or MR for short. Now stick with me here because it sounds super technical, but the basic idea is actually pretty simple. See, some of us are just born with genes that make our bodies naturally hold on to higher levels of carotenoids, no matter how many carrots we eat. Researchers can use that fact to see if those same people also happen to get a certain disease more often.
So here's how it works in a nutshell. First, they find the genes connected to higher carotene levels. Then, they scan these massive genetic databases to see if people with those exact genes also have higher rates of ED. Because our genes are pretty much set from birth, this clever trick helps them cut through all the noise, all the other lifestyle choices, to get a much clearer signal.
Okay, so we've got the how. Now for the big one. What does this genetic evidence actually mean for you, me, and our shopping lists? This brings us to maybe the most important concept in all of science news: correlation versus causation. What this study shows is a correlation. These two things, high carotene genes and ED, seem to show up together. It absolutely does not prove that one causes the other. It's a huge clue, a really interesting breadcrumb trail, but it is not the smoking gun. So, what's the theory? I mean, how could this even work biologically? Well, the leading idea is that in really excessive amounts, carotenes might damage the delicate lining of our blood vessels. Those cells are key. They release nitric oxide, which is the signal for blood vessels to relax and increase blood flow, which, as you can imagine, is pretty critical for an erection. Again, this is just a hypothesis at this point, but it's the most logical explanation they've got.
All right, so time for a reality check. How much should we really be worrying about our carrot intake? Let's put all this into perspective.
Let's start with the elephant in the room: age. It is, by a long shot, one of the biggest factors here. While about 1 in 5 men might experience ED overall, that number skyrockets to over half of men over the age of 70. This just goes to show you that this is a super common and really complex issue with a ton of different things playing a role.
And speaking of those other things, what are they? Well, it's pretty much the usual suspects you see for a lot of health stuff: heart disease, obesity, diabetes, and lifestyle factors like smoking or not exercising. These guys, these are the scientifically proven heavyweights. The carotene link, if it's even causal, is just a tiny piece of a much, much bigger puzzle. Okay, we've waded through a lot of science. So what's the bottom line? What should you actually do with this information? Let's wrap it all up. So we've been throwing the word carotenes around a lot. What are we actually talking about here? Well, it's not just carrots. It's sweet potatoes, pumpkin, mangoes, apricots, and even leafy greens like spinach and kale. Look at this list. These are some of the healthiest foods on the planet.
So let me say this as clearly as I possibly can. Please, do not stop eating these foods. The health benefits you get from a diet packed with these colorful fruits and vegetables are massive and proven. The takeaway here isn't to start fearing carrots. It's that old, boring, but true advice: balance and moderation.
So if you really want to focus on what makes the biggest difference, the stuff that's been proven time and time again, here it is. Eating a balanced diet with lots of different colors, managing your weight, getting regular exercise, and keeping chronic conditions in check. This is the stuff that actually moves the needle. These are the things that have rock-solid science behind them.
And all of this really leaves us with one final, big question. This whole carrot story is a perfect case study and the challenge we all face every single day. So when the next scary health headline pops up, how do you separate what's real from what's just noise? Thinking about that, well, that's the real key to being smart about your health. Thanks for tuning in.